It was on a late August night in New York City in 1987 when hip-hop may have first lost its innocence. Almost 14 years to the day after DJ Kool Herc spun the genre into existence with his first ever block party in the Bronx, Scott LaRock of Boogie Down Productions was shot in the head and neck in the same borough, later dying of his wounds at Misericordia Hospital. He was 25 years old. LaRock's murder was the first, but certainly not the last, hip-hop slaying that has gone unsolved by the police. For a genre of music that is no stranger to discussing the realities of the struggles in the inner cities, hip-hop artists have fallen victim to violence far too often over the years, with authorities largely ineffective in their efforts to find responsible parties. Consider some of the facts. In the 32 years between Scott LaRock's shooting death in the Bronx in 1987 and Pop Smoke in February of 2020, the most recent case of a hip-hop murder, we've documented 70 rappers who have been murdered, nearly 2 per year. Of those murders, only a handful have been definitively solved. That leaves more than 40 MCs cut down before their time whose murders have never been solved by the police. To put that number in perspective, NPR reported in March 2015 that the national clearance rate for homicides in the United States stands at 64.1%. Those numbers are so far apart they'd almost be laughable if they weren't so sobering. Hip-hop has always been tied to the streets. To that end, death and murder has also, unfortunately, been a tragic part of rap music. We're remembering the lives of those rappers who have been murdered. From the late 70s and early 80s, when DJs would come together to battle against other neighborhoods, to the evolution in the late 80s and 90s, when rappers would detail what life was like trying to live free as black men in impoverished communities unjustly targeted by law enforcement. That link was cemented when hip-hop was rocked by one of its earliest murders, the 1987 death of Boogie Down Productions DJ, Scott LaRock. In some cases, rappers have struggled to let it go completely to focus on creating, and their string of trouble simply followed them into the business, ending in death. In other cases, fame brought about extra unwanted attention, and the violence was only exacerbated by the limelight, as was the case with artists like Tupac. In other instances, it was simply a case of being somewhere at the wrong time, or a small incident which escalated violently. D12's Proof's tragic murder was a prime example. Sometimes, the murders were solved, but in many, no arrests were ever made, including the highly publicized murders of Jam Master Jay and Notorious B.I.G. However, in almost all the cases, the rappers were young, in their late teens or early 20s. And no on this list made it to see the age of 40. Born Laysane Parish Crooks, Tupac Shakur, June 16, 1971, September 13, 1996, also known as Tupac and Machiavelli, is by far the most famous dead rapper in all of hip-hop history whose death remains a mystery to this day. A pioneer in West Coast and gangsta rap, Tupac was well known for his complex and deep lyrics as well as touching on social and political issues during a time when it was not common for gangsta rappers to do so. After making a name for himself in Los Angeles' underground rap scene, he dropped his debut solo album, Tupacalypse Now. He released 4 more albums, all to critical acclaim and record-breaking sales. He also had a few acting roles, most notably in Poetic Justice and Above the Rim. However, Tupac and other West Coast rappers had developed a feud with many of the East Coast's prominent artists at the time, including the Notorious B.I.G., aka Biggie, Hit 'Em Up, a diss song toward Biggie, which would only deepen the rift between the two groups. On the night of September 7, 1996, Shakur was shot on the Las Vegas Boulevard following the Bruce Seldon vs. Mike Tyson boxing match at the MGM Grand. While some suspected rivals from the East Coast, others suspected gang members from Los Angeles looking for vengeance. Some say it was Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. Yet no one was ever formally charged. The murder remains unsolved to this day. Many of Tupac's recordings were released following his death again, to strong critical acclaim. As of 2019, Tupac has sold 75 million records worldwide and been posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Christopher Wallace, May 21, 1972, March 9, 1997, more commonly known as the Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, or Biggie, was also one of rap's greatest legends who died too early. Known for his versatile style and smooth flow, the Notorious B.I.G. was signed to Sean Puffy Combs' label Bad Boy Records in 1993, appearing on various tracks and making a name for himself. His debut album Ready to Die was released in 1994 and is considered to be one of the most iconic hip-hop albums of all time. He was shot and killed on March 9, 1997 in Los Angeles. While he was vocal about his beef with Tupac and other West Coast rappers, no one has been charged with his murder and his death remains unsolved. His second album, Life After Death, was released 2 weeks after his death. To date, he has certified sales of over 28 million records and has also been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.